Hello, welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show you how RPCS3 performs on modern hardware. I tested more than 20 games, mostly exclusives, including titles that previously had many issues running, even on more recent hardware. Throughout the video, we'll analyze how the emulator stands in 2026, keeping in mind that in 2025 it received about a 25% performance boost. Before anything else, I'd really appreciate your like on this video, and if this is your first time here, consider subscribing to the channel. This was a very demanding video to produce. In total, more than 500 gigabytes of files were downloaded, and over 2.5 hours of gameplay were captured. After all, in this test, each game was run for at least 10 minutes to reach a solid conclusion about whether it's truly playable, or if it crashes at specific points. Unlike more superficial videos, I didn't just run the game for a minute at the beginning and record it. Several adjustments were made, and some games were even captured at different frame rates. The idea isn't just to show the game running at its native PlayStation 3 FPS, but to demonstrate the real performance I was able to extract. Here we'll actually see the limit of what the emulator and the hardware can deliver. Speaking about the tests, all of them were run with internal resolution scaled by 1.25, meaning 1080p, except for Uncharted 3, which was captured at native resolution because increasing the resolution causes the emulator to malfunction. As for performance patches, I used everything recommended by the emulator itself. Non-essential patches were not applied. The maximum FPS limit set for this test was my monitor's refresh rate, which is 180 FPS. In total, around 20 different games were tested. Now, let's get to the tests, right after the sponsor messages. If you want to buy original games while saving a lot, check out Instant Gaming, the digital store that sells games for various platforms, such as PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. Get games of all genres with discounts of up to 95%. You'll also find a variety of gift cards and credits for other services. You can pay for your order through your credit card on a website with a 4.7 rating on Trustpilot. You're buying games directly from Instant Gaming, not from other retailers. If you encounter any issues, Instant Gaming offers 24/7 support. What are you waiting for to save? Links in the description. Starting with Drakengard 3, which is still stuck on the PlayStation 3 to this day. This game became more popular for being a kind of grandfather of Nier Automata. The visuals and effects are reproduced along with the huge bosses on screen without any drops. In terms of performance, we managed to stay at 180 FPS most of the time, with an average of 173 FPS, an impressive result for this title. For anyone planning to play at a high frame rate, don't forget to use the game patch to increase camera speed. I consider God of War Ascension one of the hardest games to run on this platform, at least until early 2025, when most issues were fixed. Depending on your hardware, performance can still be below expectations, but overall the game is now playable in most scenarios. Since it can speed up with unlocked FPS, I prefer to keep it locked at 60. In my case, I managed to maintain a stable and acceptable FPS, so the experience was excellent. With God of War 3, unlocking the FPS pushed it a bit over 100 FPS, which is excellent for one of the heaviest games on the PS3. However, since it also speeds up, the ideal choice was to lock it at 60 FPS, and again the game managed to stay at that value most of the time, without slowdowns or graphical issues, except during shader compilation. Gran Turismo 5 is already playable on most PCs, but you still need to use a specific update and some extra settings, all available on the compatibility page of RPCS3. Gameplay runs above 120 FPS, and in some spots goes over 140. This game still has an absurd number of shaders, which can cause stutters and even crashes during the first sessions. After that, the more shaders you have, the slower the initial loading becomes. In my case, with over 5,000 shaders, the first launch takes more than 5 minutes. Installing the emulator on an SSD drastically reduces this time. Gran Turismo 6 still has occasional issues, unlike GT5. Some textures turn green or flicker depending on the track, even following all recommendations and updates from the compatibility list. FPS also isn't great, ranging between 40 and 60. Another thing that bothers me is the low resolution look, even running at 1080p, almost like it's still at 720p, plus the frequent lack of anti-aliasing. Overall, this is the first game on the list that really asks for a better CPU than mine, and depending on the track there are still slowdowns. I downloaded an Infamous from Temu in Russian, and the saves weren't compatible with my version. So I played from the starting area to the beginning of the second part in the city. In the initial area I got around 100 FPS, but I noticed missing fire and smoke effects. Still, the game runs well within reason. In the city section, frame rate stayed between 50 and 60 with no visual problems. Without a decent CPU, performance drops will probably happen. Infamous 2 also received significant performance improvements, getting close to 60 FPS on my setup. In previous tests it was easy to go over 30 but hard to stay near 60 for long. In the second part of the game, at the docks, FPS is even better, reaching 80 most of the time. For fans of this game, maybe it's time to try again. Killzone 2 showed some regression. I had tested this game on my current PC before and it ran well. I can still run it, but after about 4 minutes the game crashed. So if you plan to play it, be ready for emulator restarts. Performance stayed between 60 and 90 FPS depending on the scene. Unlike it, Killzone 3 has decent stability. I've been playing it in my free time and already went through some stages without crashes or visual issues. Performance is good within reason, but it requires a strong CPU. Overall I can play between 80 and 120 FPS depending on the scenario. Metal Gear Solid 4: Guns of the Patriots will remain stuck on the PS3 until a remake becomes available, so for now this is the only way to play it outside the original console. Interestingly, it's one of the lighter games on the list, running above 60 FPS even on my 10th Gen i5. But here's a warning, don't run it far above 60 FPS, because that can cause disk reading issues during cutscenes and even crashes in the emulator. For anyone wanting to revisit the classic before a possible remake, it's already fully playable as long as your PC can handle it. Midnight Club Los Angeles is still one of the most problematic games to run on RPCS3. Not even my CPU can run it decently, as there's extremely high processing usage just to barely keep the game at 30 FPS. Instead of playing it here, I recommend using the Xbox version on Xenia. Even with small graphical issues, there you can keep the game above 60 FPS without as much CPU demand as on RPCS3. One of the games that still isn't listed as playable but has excellent performance is PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. This is another game that already ran smoothly on my old i5. In terms of performance, it's not viable to go above 60 FPS, because that speeds up the fights and makes the characters uncontrollable, unless you're Flash. With FPS locked at 60, gameplay is acceptable and free of graphical glitches, so much so that I've finished this game several times, even leveling a character past level 50. Ratchet Clank Future A Crack in Time received several improvements throughout 2025 and now shows good performance. In the stages I tested, FPS easily went over 300, getting close to 400. However, in my save I still can't access areas with more particles and higher demand. Overall, I believe even mid-range PCs can run this game decently now. Here, just out of curiosity, I also tested Red Dead Redemption, the first game. It's worth remembering that emulated versions are no longer worth it since we have the PC version, including mods with graphical and quality of life improvements. This is the worst version to emulate because of extremely high requirements and low performance on most PCs. Even so, in my tests I got around 50 FPS in the city and 70 in open areas. In Skate 3, performance was drastically improved. Now I can easily stay at 300 FPS, even without needing it. This game is already listed as playable, and I remember it used to have low performance spikes, but during about 5 minutes of testing I didn't notice that problem anymore. Tekken 6 is another title that has been playable for a long time, and performance here is solid. There's no point going much above 60 FPS, since that speeds up the fights. Practically any PC capable of running RPCS3 can run this game. I also tested Uncharted, Drake's Fortune in areas with denser vegetation, and the game stayed easily above 100 FPS. However, I noticed strange stuttering at times, especially when rotating the camera, as if FPS dropped below 20, even though RevaTuner Statistics Server didn't detect it. So anyone planning to play should expect small spikes of low smoothness. Uncharted 2 Among Thieves doesn't show those spikes like the first game. Gameplay is stable but requires a powerful CPU. The graphics quality is excellent, although there are small issues during shader compilation. Average FPS went above 80, with CPU usage around 50%. In Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception, it's necessary to disable some effects to get acceptable FPS. In the first areas, FPS ranged between 40 and 70, with occasional graphical issues, mainly in shadows. Overall, I didn't experience crashes. I also tested UFC Undisputed 3, since Electronic Arts still hasn't brought the franchise to PC. In older tests, games using this engine had crashes and fully black characters due to rendering issues. Now the textures have been fixed and characters appear normally. With unlocked FPS it goes over 120, but fights become sped up. Locking it at 60 keeps timing correct, but crashes still happen during gameplay, so it may still be better to use the Xbox 360 emulator. I recently saw a video saying that WED is unplayable, but that's incorrect. The game takes time to load and shaders can be slow to compile, but overall it's playable. On my hardware, I got close to the 180 FPS limit I set. So be careful with the information you use to decide whether a game is playable or not. Since you guys always ask me to test WWE games, this time the choice was WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2011. I know many people are nostalgic for this one and 13. With unlocked FPS, I easily reach 120 FPS, but fights get very fast. With FPS locked at 60, even with 4 characters on screen, the game stays stable without shader or graphical issues. And that was this week's video. Let me know in the comments if you want a video using Xenia or directly comparing the two emulators. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.
Wait a minute! Refusing to give in there. What sheer determination. Whenever I see a Bella, it reminds me to thank God, Michael, that you don't have a